classic, feeling spastically infatuated with the in-between. The ups, the downs, the curves and the rounds. I'll bring it to your city or your hometown. I'll go back in time when the feeling was fine. When funkin' was legal and it wasn't a crime. Party people lined up and down the way. A bigger celebration than your birthday. Funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt the food cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. Funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt the food cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. And I have seen the world pristine, funk you up in the bushes, funk you down in the trees. Now look around, all the frowns, the yellow, the white, the red and the brown. And keep in mind, it never costs a dime, cause funkin' is free, I remember the time. Now look today, the streets are gray, time to take it back to yesterday. Funkin' in the neighborhood, I felt the food cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt the food cause the funkin' was good. It was good in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. Funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. Funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. Funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. Funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood.
And we're live. Welcome to the Order of the Pipe. My name is West. This guy is Jim Steffey from Emerson Southern Forge, and we're here to talk about small batch blends and private blends. Jim, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a thrill.
Honestly, I mean, we have gotten so much feedback from the minute that I posted on Instagram that we were going to have you on. People were, DMing me, and people were leaving comments and stuff. Just everybody's excited to hear you speak. So this is awesome that you're on. And, thank you again for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Like I said, it's exciting to be here, and I've never been interviewed, West, so just be gentle.
I'll try my best. So Jim, how long you been blending?
This started about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the story behind why I started blending, when I came back to pipes in 2020, I started off like everybody else does. You get a cob and some aromatics, and I had a couple of pipes from when I smoked before, but I hadn't used them in a long time, and they were sitting in a can. So I went out and got some cobs and aromatics, and I didn't recognize anything from when I was smoking pipe, because we'd go to Tinderbox, because that was the brick and mortar store that was in the area that I was in. And I was similar to my grandfather. I only smoked Captain Spice. And so when I came back, I thought, well, I'll order a pound of Captain Spice. And it wasn't good. Tongue bite. It just wasn't what I remembered. So I got some other aromatics, and I kept getting tongue bite. So you get into the YouTube, and you find the mutton chop, and you relearn the breathe method, and and I just wasn't happy with aromatics. I just didn't like them. They weren't the same. I couldn't put my finger on it. And I talked to my cigar buddies, and I said, well, you never smoked anything light in a cigar. You always smoked Maduros. So try some Burley blends. And I tried Burley blends, and oh, this is much better. I found Carter Hall, which is a Cadre blend, but I think it's just an outstanding pipe tobacco. And Irish Flake and Bold Kentucky and, University Flake. Just found some excellent Burley tobaccos, and they were very good. And then I was in a brick and mortar store while I was traveling in California, and the guy said, well, have you tried English tobaccos? And I'm like, oh, I haven't. He goes, well, try English and Vapor. And I said, okay. So I got a tin of Acadian Perique and a tin of Latakia Flake and a can of Westminster from GLPs. And this was home. These were the blends that I were missing, and I absolutely love them. And I fell in love with Acadian Perique, and I had ordered 3 tins of it, and I watched another mutton chop video, and he said, you need to sell her deep, not wide. And I thought, that is wisdom to behold. So I went to order more Acadian Perique. Oh, it's discontinued, Jim.
Oh, man.
And I was so mad. It's like, why did you discontinue it? What? And then I got the tobacconist handbook. I started reading. I said, I can blend tobaccos. I can do this on my own. So I did. And I discovered that, yes, I can make a vapor, and no, it's nothing like Acadian Perique. But I liked it. And then, my first 3 blends were Bryn Mawr and L'Entressant and Connemara. So 2 English blends, and I really liked them. And then it just took off from there. I just kept ordering more tobacco and started blending. And I started sending it to friends, and they liked it. And they said, well, why don't you make one of these? And I'd make one of those and send it to them. They said, oh, this is really good. I go, okay, well, I'll just keep going. The first step in the process for me was I bought an ounce of about every blending tobacco I could get and smoked them.
Yeah, smoke them individually, right?
Yeah, that's right. I didn't have a clay pipe. I watched the Jeremy Reeves videos from Cornell and Deal, and where he talked about smoking all the individual blends, and so I did that, and I discovered that a lot of blends are great all on their own. As you can tell from my blend list, I love Latakia. And I smoke Latakia. I have a jar of just Latakia. I like Latakia a lot. And then there are other tobaccos that the best analogy that I can give you is like a spoonful of cinnamon. You don't really want to eat a spoonful of cinnamon, but boy, you sprinkle it on the right recipe, and it makes a lot of stuff fantastic.
That is a great analogy.
It just rang true. The first time I smoked Perique, I thought, I can't do this. This is going to kill me. I don't think I can finish the bowl, but I recognized the flavors in it, and just kind of went from there.
That is awesome. So really quick, though, before we go on, I need to apologize to everybody watching and listening. YouTube has disabled comments on here. So unfortunately, there's just, the online war against tobacco. Since tobacco is mentioned in the video description, I guess they auto disabled the comments. So everybody watching, I'm sorry we can't answer your questions live, but we will. I will do my best to reach out and guess what you might be thinking. However, you know what? I have an idea. Everybody find me on Instagram. find me on Instagram. Just order of the pipe on Instagram. DM me your questions, and I will keep my Instagram open, and I will find your questions on Instagram. So I'm going to mention that a few times tonight that we can't take comments live, and I apologize again for that. But no, that was a great analogy about cinnamon, though. You're right. Nobody wants to eat a spoonful of cinnamon, but used correctly in a recipe, I mean, it can make or break a recipe. It's perfect. That's a great analogy. And you actually sent me. So in preparation for this, you actually sent me like 8 of these samples here, and these are big samples. I thought you were going to send me a couple bowls of just a few of the blends, and man, I tried every one of these. I did my homework. I did some serious smoking, and man, these are good blends. I'm really, really impressed. I mean, and they're all unique too.
Well, thanks. One of the areas that people come to me and say, well, why don't you make an aromatic? Because I don't like them mostly. I just don't care for aromatics. It's not, the great thing about the pipe community is like, oh, you have to like aromatics or you have to make an aromatic or you're a terrible blender. They're just like, okay, that's just preference. And the pipe community on Instagram, the pipe community on Vero, the pipe community on YouTube is just such a warm and welcoming place. I started a YouTube channel 5 weeks ago. And mainly I started the YouTube channel just to talk about independent pipe makers, the fellows that I bought pipes from, because without independent pipe makers, me doing blends doesn't mean much. This is where, as Jay Furman so eloquently said, this is where we breathe life into our community. It's the independent pipe makers and the independent blenders that help kind of change the landscape a little and make it special. Yeah,
absolutely. So by the way, Thomas says, hello, West and Jim. This might be the same Thomas that you were speaking about. That was the inspiration for Thomas's blend.
Thomas's blend, probably.
This might be the same Thomas, actually. And that was actually the first tobacco that I got from of yours. You weren't actually there, but I got this at the Columbus Pipe Show from Papa Bear Pipes.
Yep.
And
Tim, go ahead.
So tell that story.
Well, I had saw Tim's. So Thomas convinced me to come to Instagram. I said, no, I don't like social media. I kind of hate it. It's terrible. He goes, no, the pipe community here is different. You'll like it. Just trust me. And plus you get to see all the Boswell pipes before they go on sale Monday night. And I'm like, okay. And I love Boswell pipes. I have 11 of them sitting here behind my computer. They're just fantastic pipes. And I found Papa Bear's pipe. He posted one morning a picture of an olive wood poker. In fact, this olive wood poker right here, if you can see. Maybe.
Yeah, it's nice. I like that.
I thought it was so sharp, and I called him up and said, I'd really like to get that from you. And do you? He says, yeah, I do. Take a look at my work. And we kind of struck up a little bit of friendship, and I found his website and I sent him some tobaccos. And so full disclosure, I helped Tim with his website at Papa Bear's Pipes. And I sent him some tobacco samples just to say, hey, you like English blends just like I do. Try some of these. Tell me what you think. Just give me your honest opinion. If you hate them, you hate them. If you don't, you don't. And he said, no, I really like these, and we need to do something with this. And I said, okay. And about a week later, he says, I'm doing the Columbus Pipe Show, and I want to take your blends to the show. I said, okay, go ahead, tell me what you want, and I'll send it to you. And he says, well, pick 4 blends. I'll take them. There's the get together Friday night where everybody comes out. We'll put a couple of jars out for people to try. We'll see what they say. And we sold out of Thomas blend. We sold out of Connemara, which is a vapor. I think we sold out of Balkan, and we had a little bit of Art Finnan left. And within probably 4 hours of the show ending, I was getting DMs on Instagram. Hey, where can I get your stuff? And I really didn't have any intention of selling it. It was just something that I did for fun. And the next thing you know, I'm selling jars of tobacco. So here we are. and it
Well,
just rolls right along. And Tim was instrumental. And I had sent some samples to Jay Furman, who does the Pipe and Tamper podcast, and he just was so gracious and wonderful about it, and smoked the tobacco, and he'll give his reviews here once he gets done. And like you said, I don't like to send. First off, I don't like to send out in plastic, because I think we all have the story where somebody gave you something in a plastic bag, you put it in a drawer, you forgot about it, you came back to it, and now it's excellent kindling.
Right.
And I always like to send enough where you can actually form an accurate opinion. Somewhere between 3/4 to an ounce of tobacco, that gives you a pretty good indication of what you're getting. That you can make an informed decision at that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned Jay Furman. He actually has been talking a lot about you on online. So, I mean, and he has good taste. I listen to the man. I actually have a Pipe and Tamper pocket jar right here. So,
all right. Well, when I met Jay through Tim, Papa Bear Pipes, and started a conversation with him, and we found we had a lot of similarities in what we liked and what we didn't like. And it just kind of started up as a friendship, and he's just been as gracious as he could be. But just a super guy.
Yeah.
And both Tim and Jay have these enormous followings. And I listened to Mike's podcast, the Pipe and Tamper podcast, and Mike's going, I don't like Virginias. And I'm like, you're my guy, Mike. I need to talk to you.
So you mentioned, so you are definitely a Latakia fan. So I would say, maybe half of your blends seem to be Latakia forward, and they're not overpowering by any stretch. That's the thing, is some Latakia blends you get, it's like a blast in the face of Latakia, but yours really are not. And you say that you don't really do aromatics, but one thing that I've noticed is some companies, they'll put out an English blend, they'll call it an English blend, but it still has a topping on it, or it still has a flavoring on it. And there's really this sort of fuzzy line about what defines an aromatic. Where would you draw that line in your personal opinion?
So because I'm hypersensitive to toppings, casings are fine. If they're like a liquor-based casing, those work very well for me.
Tell us the difference between a casing and a topping first.
Well, a topping is a coating that they spray on the pipe tobacco. So if you open up a pouch of Captain Black, which is one of the few aromatics, it has what I would consider a goopy kind of feel to it. And it's much better if you rub it out and let it sit for about an hour and come back to it. But that's a heavy topping on that. Whereas Carter Hall, if we were going to talk about codger blends, has a casing on it. And it's almost like that rum molasses type of flavor to it. And whatever the chemical is that they use, and I don't know if it's the glycol alcohol or what it is, but I get terrible tongue bite from it, and so I just don't like them and I don't use them. So
no, you're not the only one.
And I wanted, when I started blending, the most important thing was to be cool and easy to smoke. And Latakia, when I went through all the individual tobaccos, just had the best flavor, and it was just smooth, and it was a cool smoke, and you got the big billow of smoke from Latakia, which I like too. And I found, blending is just math. When you get the percentage right, it all comes together nicely. And, when you talk about like a lat bomb, so like Abingdon from Gregory P or GOP's is his heaviest Latakia forward. And it's probably 75% Latakia. It's out there on the curve, but it works well. Jeremy Reeves and Greg Pease know more about tobacco than I ever will, but they get it. But back to the toppings and casings, I draw the line. Casing is fine. Topping is not fine. One of my favorite tobaccos is Savinelli Essenza Cipriata, and it's got a red wine casing on it, or a Bordeaux, but it has a wine casing on it. But it's very manageable. It's got a wonderful English flavor to it, and I it was one of those that I really enjoyed. So,
yeah, that sounds delicious. Actually, have you considered doing anything similar to that? Like, when you have a really favorite blend, have you been tempted at all to try and replicate that?
No, not really, because you're talking about an infinitesimally small percentage can affect the blend. So
Mm-hmm.
I might get all the ingredients right, but if you don't get the math right,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the same thing. And that's you learn that through trial and error. I made Connemara as an answer to Acadian Perique, and it's nothing like it. I had all the ingredients, I just didn't get them in the right math. And to be honest, it's kind of like the folks that have chased Frog Morton.
Right.
Frog
That's a
Morton
great
cellar,
example.
frog.
Mm-hmm.
They're always wanting to find, and I've never had it, so I can't. I can't chase it. I don't know what it tastes like. Don't know what it smells like. I can't tell you what's in it. I just haven't had. I don't have any experience with that, so I can't tell you. But you hear it a lot in the pipe community, and you see people pay, $100 for an 8-ounce tin or $150 for an 8-ounce tin of Frog Morton.
Yeah.
And that comes back to the cellar deep, not wide. If you find something you really like, buy a lot of it while it's available.
Yeah, and that's it. And I'm glad you mentioned while it's available, because look, there is this is a delicate industry, and there's with the digital war on tobacco that's happening right now, and the way the economy is, and potential laws going through that could really drastically increase the cost of a tin of tobacco. I mean, anything could happen. So I mean, I fully advocate having a very deep cellar. Have you
Yeah.
you had any impact at all on this as far as this sort of pushback against tobacco products from people who don't really understand premium tobaccos versus cigarettes?
No, not at all, actually. The biggest pushback I have is, so when Thomas and Tim said you really need build a website.
Mm-hmm,
So I
mm-hmm.
thought, well, okay, well, I'll go to Wix, I'll go to Weebly, I'll go Daddy, I'll pick something. I
Yeah.
bought the domain, and they all, rule one, no tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
Can't talk about it, can't have it on there. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got this really cool domain name. Now what do I do? And my son, who works in IT, says, well, we'll just code you one, Dad. It'll take a minute, but I'll build one from you from scratch, and we'll go from there. So
Mm-hmm.
eventually I will have it, but e-commerce is the other problem for it.
Right.
Me being just one guy sitting in his office blending tobaccos, PayPal can't sell tobacco on PayPal, can't sell tobacco using any of the credit card services.
Mm-hmm.
It's why we have to patronize places like Smoking Pipes and Tobacco Pipes and Pipes and Cigars and Four Noggins, because somehow they've pushed that through and have gotten past it, where people like me will never be able to get past it.
Yeah, it's literally almost impossible for a small blender really to break through that barrier.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and I'm very thankful for the pipe community on Instagram, because they've come to me, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a wonderful feeling. And I try to make every interaction with anybody that comes to me a special occasion. They're kind enough to come to me. I should make it something worth doing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I think anybody who's purchased your product and talked about it online has really noticed that. I know you and I first got in contact because I posted something on Instagram that had your logo and tobacco in it, and I tagged you, and you
Mhm.
reached right out, and you left great comments. So that's how you and I got in contact. But I mean, customer service is number one, and I think you have that down. I was actually speaking with Alan Harrelson of the Pipe Cottage not too long ago, and he was talking about how in Kentucky it's unless you want to share all of your customer data and still jump through a million hoops, it's almost impossible to sell tobacco-related products.
Yes.
At least in Kentucky, and I imagine most states are probably pretty similar. So you have an uphill battle, but you have an amazing product.
Well, thanks. South Carolina isn't as bad, and I wish Alan would have stayed in South Carolina. I understand why he moved. It's always nice to have 60, 70 acres, but it's a different planet. I couldn't do this in New York. I couldn't do this in California, Washington State. I mean, there's just so many places that would absolutely shut you down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very happy being in South Carolina.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. So really quick though, I want to remind everybody, YouTube has shut down our comments, uh, has auto shut down our comments because we're talking about tobacco. So if you have a comment or a question, find me on Instagram, Order of the Pipe on Instagram, or find Jim, which is Emerson Southern Forged on Instagram, and leave your question, and we will totally answer your question. Just DM us there, and we'll get back to you. But so I have to ask you, where did you come up with the name Emerson Southern Forged? So,
Well,
Jim Steffey, where does Emerson come from? What is this?
Well, that's my name. Emerson is my name. I'm James Emerson.
Oh,
So,
okay.
And Southern Forge. So about 5 years ago.
So I apologize. I put your wrong name on here. Your
No,
email.
you're fine.
Your email was okay. I'm going to go ahead and edit this live while we're talking. Then I apologize. I'm not sure where Steffey came from. Okay.
Yeah, no, Jim Steffey is the given name, but Emerson is my middle name.
Oh,
and about
that makes sense. Okay, I apologize. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
No worries. And I started. I haven't watched TV in 3 years, so that you know,
You are a
TV is
brave, wise man.
Well, the last show that I was watching on television was a show called Forged in Fire.
I love that show. That is a great show.
It's amazing, isn't it? These guys take just hunks of metal and turn it into something special.
They're magicians.
And yeah, and so I bought a forge and an anvil, and my maker's mark for the things that I made was ESF, Emerson Southern Forge, which is, and I just carried that over. And in fact, I was going to call my tobacco line ESF, but ESF is trademarked by another company. So.
Yeah, that
and
happens.
So if you ever get a leather pipe stand from me, there's an ESF with a bear on it, because that was my forging mark that I got.
Okay.
And then last year in May, tore my Achilles, and that's when I really came hard back into pipes. You know, I probably had 10, 15 pipes at that time, but sitting here with my leg in a cast and surgery pending, eBay is a magical place. So the next thing you know, I'm buying boxes of estate pipes and refinishing them and repairing them. And then I discovered the magic of independent pipe makers. And the works of art. I mean, that's how I found Tim. That's how I found Boswell's. And Tim actually sent me to another pipe maker called Josh Anderson from Anderson Briars, and he's just excellent. And from Anderson Briars, you run into the next one. And Thomas turned me on to WPT, Kurt Walker at Walker Pipe Company, and then we both found Ron Smith at Ron's Freehands, and it's just amazing. And then you see people like Simon at LCS, who live streams making pipes. And while I was sitting with a cast on, couldn't do anything, I'm sitting on my couch watching Simon make this pipe, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And I started talking to, and so I'm communicating with him during the video. I'm typing in and said, "Oh, that's an amazing pipe." He goes, "Would you like first right of refusal?" And I said, "Well, what does that entail?" He says, "Well, I'll give you the first option to buy it when it comes out." And amazingly enough, it made its way here to South Carolina.
Nice.
It's just a gorgeous apple, slight bent, just a fantastic pipe. And that started my journey with LCS. And, again, it's the pipe community, how wonderful it is on YouTube and Instagram, that you get to see these magnificent pipe makers and their wares. And to be honest with you, I want to help them as much as I possibly can. The first expensive pipe I ever bought was from Corey Brown at ABS. I found him on Reddit, and I saw a picture of this beautiful bent billiard, and I just messaged him. He says, "Yeah, it's for sale. Do you want it?" "Yeah, yes, I do.
Nice.
I'll take that." And you just see amazing work. And through Simon, I met Jack Ryan at Jack Ryan Pipes, and I've got a couple of his and another couple coming. And you fall in love. And Boswell's is the best marketer on the planet. He's got this down cold. Every Monday night at 8:00, he puts anywhere from 10 to 15 pipes up for sale. And by 8:30, they're all gone. and they're not hyper expensive pipes, but they go anywhere from 139 to $299, and he sells out of them every Monday night.
Wow.
When Thomas introduced me, he goes, "Well, just go to Boswell's and look at their pipes." Well, I would go like on Tuesday afternoon after work, and there's no Boswell pipes. And he says, "Well, you got to get on Instagram so you can see them released." And I'm like, "Well, I don't really want to be on social media." He goes, "You're going to be on social media." I said,
You don't have a choice.
Yeah, I don't have a choice and he would send, for about a month, he would send me the pictures as soon as they hit on Instagram, and we'd talk about what pipes we liked and what pipes we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And at 8 o'clock we'd get on. In fact, it's part of my Monday ritual is 8 p.m. I get on Boswell's, to see what he's launched. And
yeah,
and he's an excellent blender, and he puts casings on his English blends.
Okay.
If you've had Northwoods or you've had Countryside, just fantastic pipe tobaccos. I think I've got 2 pounds of Northwoods. I absolutely love it, but it's got a casing on it, and you can tell.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So Thomas actually left a DM on Instagram saying you are wise beyond your years. So
Well, I don't know about that.
So you got some friends out there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You actually mentioned a couple people that a couple things I'd like to talk about. So you actually also do private blends for other people.
I do.
So I took some notes here. So one of them that I really want to talk about. Last week I actually spoke with Eric Mills of EMC Custom Cobs, which his cobs are amazing. And I only recently got my first. So at the Columbus show recently, I got my very first cobs. I've been smoking for 20 years, and I've never had cobs before, and I can't believe I didn't have any before. But so I just picked up a couple, and then I started getting into the whole custom cob thing, and spoke with Eric last week online, and found out that he's about to launch 3 new blends that are being blended by you. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. Eric, again, talked with Tim from Papa Bears at the Columbus show, and he said, I really like to get my own tobaccos.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim goes, you have to call Jim. And I think it was Monday or Tuesday after the show, Eric got a hold of me and said, I'd like to have you do a private blend for me. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, well, let me send you some samples. We'll see what you like, and we'll talk about it. And the first one that we have that we agreed on is called Dark Watch. It's an English blend. It has some cigar leaf in it. He and Katerina, his wife, really, really liked it. And then he said, well, I really want something that's not on your list. I want you to see if you can do this for me. I want an Oriental forward
mm-hmm.
English blend. I said, okay. So I ordered all the Orientals that I could get my hands on and kind of played around with it, and finally found one, and that's a Berserker. In fact, seeing how we're not allowed to have comments on this.
Yeah, and I apologize.
Tobacco, right? So,
yeah, just so everybody's aware, YouTube actually turned off our comments because we're talking about tobacco. So if you want to leave a comment or ask a question, DM me on Instagram. Just Order of the Pipe on Instagram, and we will get to your question. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. So we came up with a Latakia Perique Oriental blend, and let's see if I can get it where we can see.
That is beautiful.
And it's got just a fantastic taste, and I'm hoping I sent him out the samples. We'll see what Eric and Katrina have to say about it, and we'll go from there. And then he wanted a holiday blend that was something different, and he didn't want he didn't want something overpowering. So this is kind of a Virginia Burley, very soft, a little Oriental in it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a spiced rum cake kind of flavor to it.
Nice.
So we'll see if they like that, and we'll go from there. But Eric makes just amazing cobs, and we're working on my first custom cob from Eric, and he's just a super guy, and I think the world of him. And he apologized. He said, I didn't know if you wanted me to say your name on the air, and I said, well, I'm not ashamed of what I do, but if I get famous, I get famous. If I don't, I don't.
Yeah, because at first he mentioned that he had a custom blender making his blends for him, and he didn't want to say the name. He didn't want to step on anybody's toes, I guess. He's just
Yeah.
a ridiculously nice guy, and it's funny. After I started talking to you, I had no idea that you were the one making his blends. It's just it's a small world.
Yeah. I was watching the show, and he's like, oh, I'm doing these custom blends, and I'm like, okay, then I got kind of excited about that. In fact, I've even done one from Tim. Tim's like me. He is a Latakia guy, so he wanted.
Yeah, Papa Bear Pipes. I was going to ask you about that next.
Yeah, Papa Bear Pipes, Beaumont Supreme, which is a Latakia Perique Heavy, a little bit of Orientals, a little bit of Black Cavendish. It's just a wonderfully smooth blend. I sent his samples out this week, so we'll get some feedback on that and see where that goes. But again, I'm trying to build them to custom to what they expect. And, again, it goes down to the math. So when I do a sample for someone, I do it in typically a 50-gram increment. So if you want it to be a Latakia forward, okay, now we do the math. What percentage are you looking for in the Latakia? You want it bordering on Balkan? Do you want it to be, a medium Balkan? And you go from there and you make up the samples and send it to them. If they like them, they don't. And you go back to work on it. And that's kind of where we're at. And I'm happy to do that for anyone as long as they don't want an aromatic.
That's awesome. So are these blends that these guys plan on selling themselves, or are you going to sell them? How's this? What's the deal? What's that going to look like?
No. So Eric's blend, Eric is going to take care of that. I'm just making them for Eric and what he does with them from there. I think he's planning on some promotions. I know that they're doing a Halloween sale coming up, and I think that's going to be part of it. But he has his own ideas on marketing, and he wanted something that has, his logo and his label on it. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and this is the fun part of blending for me is you tell me what you think you should taste like, and let's see if we can't make that.
No, that's great. So real quick, WPC Pipes on Instagram says, basically he says it's unfortunate that YouTube shut off the comments. So WPC Pipes, it totally is unfortunate, and I apologize for that. So any questions you have, just DM me on Instagram, and we'll get to your questions. Thomas actually has a comment about your leather tobacco tray there. Is there a story behind that?
There is. So Thomas is the guy that the pipe makers call to fix stuff. He's probably one of the most gifted mechanics I've ever seen. And the next step of the journey for Emerson Southern Forge, Thomas is building presses so we can do. I'd like to do Navy Flakes, and I'd like to do flake tobacco.
Nice, I love that.
We'll create some blends for that. And he's, in fact, before we got on the phone, he was testing the first press, and he's come up with some new ideas. Well, anyway, the pipe tobacco tray is Thomas's.
Oh, that is great. If he sells those, I'm totally going to buy one.
He does sell them. He is not, he's on Instagram. He's Tinkers Pipes, Tinkers_pipes or Tinkers-pipes. But if you just type in Tinkers Pipes in the search bar, he'll come up and reach out to him. And he makes these, and they're, we talked about actually building a website to sell, leather pipe stands and leather trays. And we just, when they were just so negative about pipe tobacco that we have to,
I know.
We just have to wait.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. So, so Tim Beaumont, thanks for watching, man. Tim Beaumont of Papa Bear Pipes says, what can the average person do if they want to have you make a personal blend?
Message me.
There you go. That's it, huh? So if I wanted to have an order of the pipe personal blend, it's just message you, tell you what I want, and you can make it up, huh?
Well, we'll have a conversation. One of the things that that's interesting about personal blending is what people's personal tastes are. What do you want it to convey? How do you want it to make you feel when you have this tobacco?
Right.
And then we'll start working on it from there. And it might take us an incarnation or two to get exactly what you want, but we'll get you there.
That's awesome. So I haven't tried my hand at personal blending yet. I've always wanted to. And, I actually have a lot of blending components only because, early on, it's hard for the average person to be able to pull out these different flavors, right? To pull out what flavor profile is coming from what leaf. So early on, I decided I would start buying and keeping on hand blending components. So I actually have a lot of blending components around because I like to smoke some of them individually, and some of them I keep around just to puff individually once in a while to keep up on the flavor profiles. What would you say would be the average person's foot in the door if they want to start making their own blend? Just experiment, just throw stuff together that appeals to them?
Yeah, basically. So take a look at what your favorite blend is that you're buying. Whether it's a Cornell and Deal or whether it's a Peterson or a Mac Baron or a GLPs. Take a look at what, because the description will tell you what's in it.
Mm-hmm.
It won't tell you the percentage, won't give you the math, but it'll tell you what's in it. And then you can start to, and to be honest, if you watch Jeremy Reeves' videos where he smokes the individual components, I would tell you to do that first. If you wanted to do this at home, pick your favorite tobacco, order an ounce of each of those ingredients, put it in. If you don't have a clay pipe, and you can get a clay pipe, if not, if you have a Mersum pipe, Mersum works just as well.
There you go.
If you don't have one of those, just put it in your pipe and see what you pick up. One of my favorite blending ingredients is basma. It's an Oriental. It's got a unique incense, but it's a warm, buttery flavor that I really enjoy. But man, it's hard to smoke it in a bowl. It's not as fun as it looks. But again, that's going back to the blending. You have to, okay, when I smoke my favorite blend, this is what I taste, and I want to make it a little bit different. I think it's missing X. Once you start to understand the flavor profiles a little bit that fits your palate, then you can start to pick tobaccos that fit your palate and build those blends.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I want to talk about some of your blends here. So you got some really interesting blends, and man, I'm still just amazed that you sent me this many. So I only asked for 3 specific ones because I thought they had good stories behind them based on your descriptions. But you sent me 8, so we're going to talk about some of these and even some of the ones that I haven't tried yet. I'd love to hear about. But real quick, okay. Scott McMunn on Instagram. Thanks for watching, man. He's a great guy. If you haven't checked out Scott McMunn on Instagram, his posts are awesome.
Okay.
But so earlier,
Scott, if you're watching, connect with me.
There you go. Exactly. So one of them that you mentioned earlier, which is Connemara, which, and I asked for this one because I like this story, but I like the description, and I got to hear the story. So it says a vapor blend created due to your anger about Mac Baron's Acadian Perique being discontinued. So they discontinued, so you're like, I'm just going to make my own.
That's exactly right. I come back to pipe smoking and I find something that I really, really enjoy. I enjoy Acadian Perique. It was the first vapor blend I tried. And I just love the way the flavors meld together. And, Pierre George is just one of, the great blenders out there. And I loved Acadian Perique. And I have 4 tins. And I went to order more because I was going to sell her deep. Oh, it's discontinued.
Of course.
Oh, I hate that. Please don't do that. And I just got mad. And I thought, well, okay, if I'm going to make a vapor, which I've never done, why don't we try a couple of English blends too? So the first 3 blends I made were L'Entresant, Bryn Mawr, and Connemara. And I discovered in my uniqueness that no, I can't make Acadian Perique at all. It's nothing like it, but it was a very good vapor. I like the longer it sat in my closet, the better and better it got. Virginia's, in my opinion, you buy a tin of Virginia and you put it in the closet for a year.
Yeah.
And then if you can leave it for 2 years, it's even better. If you only leave it 5, it's unbelievable. And it changes so dramatically. It mellows fantastically, and Virginias are just spectacular aged. And from there with Acadian Perique, then I got into some Navy blends, Mac Baren Navy, Newminster's 400 Superior Navy Flake, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Sextant from GLP's. Meridian kind of borders on a Navy blend. I think it's got a rum casing on it, but it's just spectacular. Another great blend. There's so many guys that are just, like I said, Greg and Jeremy and Bear George have forgotten more about tobacco than I'll ever know.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. And I do love vapor. So it's funny. I think there are a lot of guys who just love vapor. And there are some guys who are just deep into the other flavors, and they just completely overlook that particular blend. And you're right, the age makes all the difference in the world. There's actually a guy here on Instagram, Blake1827, who sent me. Where do I have this? Right here. Who sent me some 2016 luxury bullseye flake, and he sent me a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's probably a good 4 ounces here. Of this 2016 luxury bullseye flake, and you smoke this next to the 2022 stuff, and it's night and day. I mean, the edge is just completely off any of the smoke. It's smooth and it's mellow, and it's a completely different tobacco. I mean, even the color is different.
Yeah. Well, I bought probably a pound of Orla Golden Slice in 21. Mm-hmm. And I promised myself I wasn't going to touch it until 24.
Yeah.
It's in the back of the closet. It's in its jars. It's happy. It's getting mellow. And you find that Virginia's especially improves so dramatically with age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. 100%. So before we move on with some of the other blends, the names of these blends. Describe the naming convention you came up with here.
Okay, so if you ever travel to the UK,
mm-hmm.
and I have to for work periodically.
Oh, that's awesome.
The English will talk smack about the Welsh and the Scottish and the Irish.
They do.
And the Welsh will talk smack about the English and the Scottish and the Irish, and they'll all talk smack about each other. But as an American, if I start talking smack about one of the other ones, everyone would jump on me with both feet. So my little tweak is that all my English blends are named after villages in Ireland and Scotland and Wales.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's really funny. I love that.
And it's a wonderful place to visit, and I have a lot of close personal friends in those places, and it's just a cultural difference. That like when you come to South Carolina, people talk a lot about smack about people from Ohio, and it's
right.
Fine. That's the nature. But if somebody comes in and an Englishman crosses the border and comes in and starts talking about smack about Iowa,
oh, it's war.
We're not going to put up with that either. So,
right.
I can talk, but you can't. So
that's funny. No, that's awesome. That's I love that about these blends. That is so cool. That is funny.
And you just Google search, and almost all of them are coastal villages somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only one that's not is Aberdeen. It's just a name I pulled off. It's close to Balmoral Castle
mm-hmm.
in Scotland.
No, that's great. I actually lived in England for a couple of years in high school, so I spent some time over there. It was nice. A lot of fun. So out of these blends that you sent me, the first one I tried because look, I'm not shy about jumping into the deep end, and the description had me locked into that, which is Clarenbridge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Latakia, Red Virginia, Dark Burley, and Izmir. And in the description, you said stout and not for the timid. So here are my notes, and tell me if I'm wrong. So here's the thing. Here's the great thing about trying small batch and private blends, is you can't get influenced by other people's reviews, because chances are there aren't many reviews out there. Like you buy from smokingpipes.com, and you can dig into the reviews. And that will influence how you experience the tobacco, I've noticed. Like, you actually start to read other people's reviews, and you're like, oh, okay, I can see that, or I kind of get that idea from this. But we're going in blind to these. So tell me if I'm wrong on what I see here. So It says stout, not for the timid, and I was expecting something a Latakia bomb, frankly, based on how Latakia forward some of your blends are, and again, none of them are overpowering. This one I actually wrote down. It's not overpowering at all, like not at all. It's definitely Latakia forward, but it mixes really, really nice with the Burley, and the Virginias and Izmir come out more in the retro hail. Let's see. This would actually make a really great smoke on a cold autumn day. Autumn evening, sitting in front of a fire. That's like the feeling that I got from smoking this one.
This is where you have to take reviews with a grain of salt, because your palate is not the same as my palate, and no one's palate is the same. And you can't. I would just someone say something like that. This is how I felt about it, and that's perfect. Some people can't taste things on the retrohale, and some people have a different mouthfeel for tobacco, and I think that if that's how you felt about Clarenbridge, then that's perfect. The nicest compliment, I have two great compliments that I've been given. One was given to me by Master First Sergeant Travis, who may or may not be watching. He said Bryn Mawr is decadent. And I thought that was an excellent description.
Yeah.
And then Tim at Papa Bear's Pipes. So full disclosure, Tim and Thomas and I are all Catholic. And he had Thomas's blend, and he had it with his grandson and his son. And he said, "Oh, this tobacco will make you a believer." And I thought that those were the two just most insanely wonderful comments that I could get. For someone to think enough of my blend to call it decadent, or someone to say that this will make you a believer, I thought that was excellent. And if you thought that was perfect to be out in front of a campfire on a fall evening, what a wonderful compliment. And I can't, fills my heart with joy.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, it just fills you with just that warm feeling, it was great. I love that. So yeah, actually the first blend that I actually got was a jar of Thomas's blend, and I got it specifically because of that description, because it says a friend said this blend will make you a believer. So that's great. Let's see. The next one next on the list is the Glarelock, which is it's 2 mature red Virginias, red and black Cavendish, bright Virginia, dark Burley, Perique, Turkish ribbon. It's a sweet and savory blend. So let's see. On this, I have the Virginias. Actually, in the tin, some of these the Virginias seem very dominant, which makes me think your blends are going to do really well with age. Once that kind of grassy hay notes sort of mellow out with the rest of the blends, I mean, they're going to be amazing with some age. So in the 10, the Virginia seemed a little dominant, which is great. I still love a good Virginia. But in the pipe, the Perique and the Turkish really came out, and that's where they started to play, which was very, very nice. The Burley's in there, but it didn't really become too evident until the retro hail. So there's this really great play with the way the blends interact, and you can taste at different points in the pipe and different elements of smoking it the experience that comes along with those. And the Cavendish wasn't dominant at all, but it added just a touch of sweetness that sort of mellowed everything out, which was great for me.
Excellent. Thank you. So when you see dark Burley in one of my blends, that's typically to take a little of the fire off the Virginias.
Okay.
A new Virginia, something that doesn't have any age on it, because of the sugar content, they do burn a little hotter.
Yeah.
And if my mantra is cool, smooth smoke, there has to be a way to tone it down a hair without taking the flavor away from it. And for me, dark Burley complements most Virginias very well. It has that soft, almost molassesy taste to it. It's not, dark Burley is another one of those where if you have a whole spoonful of it, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much, like cinnamon.
You're right.
When you get the math right on Burley, it really complements the Virginia as well.
And you're right. You know, you get a lot of guys who either claim to be a Burley guy, or they say I'm not a Burley guy. And really, you know, that's an interesting thing I've noticed about this community is everybody finds their favorite, which is great. That's exactly what you should do, and they
Mhm.
sort of stick in that lane. But you know, your blends, the way they're blended, which makes me think, again, they're going to do amazing things with age. Is they're actually really complex. You do some very, very interesting things.
Well, thank you. Again, when I started to look at this, for me, it was okay. So I've smoked this, and I taste this, and I smoke this, and I taste this. Now let's get the math right. How
Mm-hmm.
much? What's the percentage of this that works? And you know, out in the garage, I have what I call the jar of doom. You know, here are 50-ounce jars of things that I should try this. No, you shouldn't try that. That was bad. Put that in the jar of doom. And eventually, I'll compile the jar, press it down, and see what 10 or 15 mistakes taste like. So
Right. Well, look, it was wasn't it Thomas Edison that said, I haven't failed. I found 10,000 ways not to do it, not to create a light bulb."
that's right.
I love that
That's right.
quote. So you know, I don't want to bore everybody with my reviews of every one of your tobaccos, but I do want to talk about one more, which is the Traymore, which I think was the
Okay.
most unique for me. So the description is it's Latakia, Izmir, Perique, Bright Virginia, and Black Cavendish, which, you know, it doesn't sound that exotic, but you know, I took note. The Izmir and the Perique are definitely dominant in the tin note and in the pipe, but the Latakia is present in the smoke, and the retrohale is not, but not overpowering with the Latakia.
Mhm.
The sweet grassy notes with a hint of Cavendish helped to smooth it all out. So this was definitely the most unique for me out of all of them, and it's one that I could smoke all day long. It was great.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I try to blend so that they're all day smokes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are some that are just not, and they're not going to appeal to everyone's palate. You know, I smoke a lot of Lantrasant, and I can see how some people that would not be an all day blend for them. That would be the once in a while blend. And Claren Bidge is kind of the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an all day everyday smoke. It's something to have when you have the mood strikes you. And that's, I think, the joy of pipe tobacco is that so many blends are out there that can cater to the mood that you're in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when you're creating a new blend, do you have in mind like the flavor profile you'd like to end with, or do you kind of create the recipe as you go along and say, "Oh, this is nice. I wonder what would happen if I did this." Like, what's your thought process from the beginning?
Um, so as I'm looking and expanding, it's about, so if I'm doing an English blend, obviously there'll be Latakia and there'll be Orientals in it. And picking how each Oriental plays with a different Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I can get a hold of aged Virginia, if I can get a hold of some mature red,
Yeah.
it responds differently than bright Virginia. So you start to do the blend, and most important to me when I'm starting it is, what is the tin note like? Because if the tin note isn't any good, chances are I'm not going to like it very
Mm-hmm.
much. So you just start to work the math, and I don't have any set process or pattern. It'll just come to me, and I'll start putting the tobacco together. And the tobacco fairy came today and dropped off about. My wife says, "What are we going to do with these?" And I said, "Well, it's a pound of leaf. We're going to put a Laugh Love Lube throw pillow on it, and make it a."
Is that whole leaf?
Yeah, it is.
That is all.
Yeah,
What are you going to do with that?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is grind it up so that it's in a usable form.
Okay.
So
Is
this
that
is, I call it curmudgeon. It's KRUMOVGRAD.
Hmm.
I have
I
no
don't
idea how to
I don't know
pronounce
that
that.
leaf. Okay.
So it was one of the Orientals that I haven't put in a blend yet.
Mm.
So I'm going to grind that up, put it in half a dozen jars, let it age a little bit, and see what it tastes like once it's got to mellow a little bit.
Yeah,
See what
interesting. Do you buy most of your tobaccos in whole leaf, or do you is it a variety?
Just a variety.
Mhm.
It depends on what I'm trying to do. Like for Eric's Berserker blend, he wanted Oriental forward. Well, typically when you buy blenders from either smoking pipes or pipes and cigars, you have a choice between Izmir and Smyrna,
Mhm.
and neither one of them are what I would call overpowering uh, Orientals.
Mhm.
They're not. Um, this fierce Oriental flavoring to it. Izmir, has got the nice incense feel, but it's not as powerful as a Perique or some of the other tobaccos are. So if you wanted something Oriental forward, we have to look at, okay, what's the mildest Virginia I can get to go with this? And
Mhm.
I saw Basma, and I had ordered Basma a while ago. It took a while to get it, and I shredded it up and put it in the blend. And once it had the Izmir and the Smyrna and the Basma, it gave it a wonderful incense note to go with the Latakia and the Virginias that are in it, and it just worked. Eric and Katrina will tell if it works, but if they don't like it, I'll bring it out under my label because I really liked it. So
Yeah, that is awesome. That's good to know. I love hearing your process. That is really cool. So Thomas on Instagram, by the way, just for everybody, YouTube disabled our comments because we're talking about tobacco. So if you have a question or a comment, find me on Instagram, order the pipe on Instagram, and we'll read your question. But he mentions that what people have to remember is that your tobaccos are truly unadulterated tobaccos at their finest. Which I mean, that sounds spot on. You don't do aromatics. You don't do toppings or casing. You have the tobacco for the tobacco's sake, which is as a purist, that's great. That is awesome.
uh, it's just spawned of my sensitivity to toppings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, when Thomas gets done with the presses, there will be some Navy flakes and there will be some plugs, but I'll try to do as many without casings and toppings. There'll never be a topping on any of my stuff because I can't. It doesn't suit my palate. I don't like it. And it's okay if everyone else does. And that's what's great about
Mm-hmm.
the pipe community. There are people that love aromatics. I have 4 aromatics that I smoke about once a year. Dan's Blue Note, which is a European aromatic, which is very light as far as topping goes, but you still taste tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter
Mm-hmm.
Stockby's Optimum, which I just really enjoy the flavor of. You deal with the tongue bite because you enjoy the flavor. And then Plum Cake from Mac Barron.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I think all of those things have in common is that they're not an overpowering topping on them.
Mm-hmm.
And and I, like I said, I don't smoke them all that often, maybe once or twice a year, but every now and then the mood strikes me. Um, and then I have a love for Contra blends. My grandfather grew up I grew up around my grandfather smoking pipe, and he smoked one pipe tobacco, Amphora Blue. That was it.
Yeah.
If the drugstore or the gas station was out of Amphora Blue, he would smoke Captain Black and complain about it until he got
Yep.
another pouch of Amphora.
He's a codger.
Yeah, and when you look at brands like Carter Hall, which I have a love affair with, and Prince Albert and Sir Walter
Mm-hmm.
Raleigh, there's a reason that these blends have survived. Carter Hall's been around since 1895.
Mm-hmm.
Sir Walter Raleigh's been around since the 20s. Prince Albert's been around, I think, also since the 20s. Captain Black's been around since 1957. The reason that these blends survive so long is because they're good.
Right.
I saw a chart once where the evolution of a pipe smoker. You start off smoking aromatic Contra blends out of a cheap pipe, and then you graduate to more expensive blends in a cheap pipe, and then
Mm-hmm.
your more expensive blends in a very expensive pipe. And then the final step of the evolution is you're back to smoking Cadre blends in a very expensive pipe.
That's funny. I
And
like that.
and that's this community, nobody really ever gets down on anything, but sometimes you get that feeling that some people don't like Codger blends, and they have their place. And like I said, I have a love affair with Carter Hall, and I'm almost embarrassed to tell you about the blend that I disliked the most because the reviews on it were outstanding, and I bought a pound of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, that happens all the time. It's and that's one of the things. Like everybody likes what they like. And you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, everybody's palate is different. Everybody's gonna have a different idea of what something tastes like. One of the problems that I have when I do reviews is, the really good reviewers. Well, good in quotes, I guess. The really professional and well-known reviewers. They'll talk about nutty notes and stone fruits and all the interesting analogies of what a tobacco tastes like, leather and whatnot. And I shouldn't use this as an example, but I have to because I love this example. I've been a cigar guy for a long time. I actually got into pipe smoking because I used to manage a cigar shop. But there's a book from Cigar Aficionado that Bill Cosby, of all people, wrote the foreword to. And he was, which is why I shouldn't tell this story, but it's a great story. So in this foreword, he talks about when he smokes a cigar, he doesn't want to taste shoe leather or nuts or bolts or whatever. And he's like, I want my tobacco to taste like tobacco. And I kind of feel the same way. Like I can pick up notes of stone fruit and nut and leathery and autumn leaves and whatnot. But I have a hard time using that description because it doesn't really compute to me the same way. I break it down to the type of tobaccos that are used because that's how my mind works. But everybody's palates are different. We won't get into microbiomes, but literally people will taste things differently from other people. So something that has 5-star review on smoking pipes, some people are going to hate it, frankly.
Yeah, and one of the most respected reviewers, in my opinion, is Jim Inks on tobacco reviews. His reviews are always so in depth and they're always informative, and he tastes things that I don't.
Yeah.
It's not for lack of trying. It's just that my palate is different than his, and you look at the reviews and I think he's reviewed everything that's ever been put in a pipe, and he's just a wealth of knowledge, and they're spectacular reviews, and periodically my opinion differs from his, and it's the great thing about the pipe community. It's I'm me. I did not taste warm molasses on a hot tin roof.
Right, exactly. But
Yeah.
but you're right. This community is the best. I am honestly 100% convinced that the pipe smoking community is the best community on the planet. Just genuinely nice people. You occasionally hear some fringe stories about some upsets in the YTPC. But overall, I've never met a nicer group of people in my entire life.
No, and so welcoming.
Yeah.
When I came into Instagram and started talking to people, oh, would you like to be in our chat group? Cloud Bear on Instagram has Adam has a great chat group, and he invited me to participate in it. And just a wonderful bunch of guys that talk about pipe tobacco and every other thing that pops into our head, and it's just unlike any other community. And that's one of the things I've thought about for a long time. We talked earlier before the show about that I helped Tim at Papa Bears with his website, and one of the things that I would really like to see at some point is like a pipe makers showcase, just a website where you'd have 15 or 20 pipe makers displaying their wares. It wouldn't be an e-commerce site, simply because of the logistics of it, but it would be someplace where you could see multiple pipe makers at one time. Like some kind of market show place, and then you have contact information and build a link into it, so that some of these guys that are just starting out, that are really trying to find their way, Pipes by Woo, Garrett and Dan at Ohio Briars and Josh at Anderson Briars and some of the others, you know, yeah, they could probably afford it to build the website, but how much traction will it get? How much time do they have to designate to driving folks and building content for it? Where, you know, a marketplace like this would actually build content for them, and it would be constantly evolving because they'd be constantly adding, you know, the Google crawlers would pick it up, and it would have a different feel to it. You're not really asking them to compete, you're just asking them to be at a pipe show online.
Right.
Is about what I would think of the equivalent of that would be, and I would love to do that. So if any of you guys are out there and you want to do that, contact me, and we'll see if we can't set something up where we build a pipe maker showcase.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea. And look, you know web design, so I think you have an idea there.
We'll find out how many people contact me after the show. So
there you go. Actually, it's funny. I'm sure he contacted you, but there was a guy who actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, where can I buy your blends?" And I was like, "Well, I don't actually sell blends, but you can reach out to Emerson Southern Forge, and his stuff is amazing." So he may have reached out to you or not. Let's see.
Scott McMunn has already reached out to me, by the way.
Awesome.
Thank you, Scott. Greatly appreciate it.
And he actually just left a comment. He said the mistake jar of tobacco will probably turn out to be delicious with age. And it's funny he mentioned that. So I'm not sure where he got mistake jar. Oh, he's probably talking about when you're blending and kind of coming up with stuff that doesn't quite work, and you're sort of discovering what the blend should be. It brings me
the
up,
jar of doom.
Yeah. So that actually brings up something. So I actually have something that I call the graveyard. So do you remember when you were a kid and you would go to the local ice cream shop and you got a slushie and you said, "I'll have a graveyard." And what that is they put in like every flavor into the cup, and it turned out to be this sort of gray, sludge.
Yeah.
That was the most delicious thing in the world to you. So what I do is, whenever I'm packing a bowl, there's always the leftover that's on the cutting board. I'll actually save those. I'll put those into a jar, and I'll save that jar for the entire year. And it's a combination of literally everything I smoke throughout the year. And it's funny, from year to year. I actually have a couple here. They're completely the aromas and the flavor profiles are completely different based on what I smoked that year. It's very, very interesting. So have you come up with any sort of accidental, this is amazing blends?
Yeah, actually, St. Finian's. It's
okay.
Because it was an Irish miracle. I was working on, so I had the blend and I had the calculator and I was working on stuff and I had some things left over, and at some point I must have hit the mouse and it clicked to a different page and it said, okay, add 16 grams of cigar leaf. And I was like, oh, okay. So I put it in and I got done, and I realized that I was working off the wrong page, and I thought, well, I'm committed to it now. And I jarred it up and let it sit for a while, and I took it out, and it was just so completely different from anything I'd made. I thought, well, I got to keep that.
Yeah.
It's just different. It was a little bit of, just, well, let's face it, St. Finian's was a wag, a wild ass guess. Just stuff that happens when, oh, look, Jim had doorway amnesia, was working on something, walked out of the room, came back, and did something completely different.
Look, that's isn't that how they come up with penicillin? Just an accident in the lab. So
a little mold on some cheese. Next thing you know, we're curing very simple diseases.
Exactly. But that was actually a good one. I actually really enjoy cigar leaf in my pipe tobacco occasionally. That's actually one of the reasons I like, some Jeremy Reeves and some things they're doing over there, or Warped actually does that pretty often, is put cigar leaf in their tobaccos. It just adds a really interesting new note.
Yeah, well, Key Largo is another that's I think that's a GLP's. GLP's is Key Largo? Yeah, I think so. It's got that really interesting cigar leaf flavor to it. It's not overpowering by any way, but you can definitely pick up the notes of it. And that's, to be honest, I had a tin of Key Largo, and I thought, well, it's not for me, but I like the cigar leaf. So I think I bought 8 or 12 ounces of cigar leaf and threw it in a jar and went from there. And
Yeah, I actually have a pound of it I keep here just to sprinkle into other blends occasionally. So
yeah.
So that's awesome. So we've been going for a while. I don't want to keep you all night. You did mention that you have a YouTube page, YouTube channel. How often do
Yep,
you post on there? And what's your channel name?
It's Pipe Hooligan, which is my other name on Instagram. I,
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, thought it would be a lot more fun to post the same things to 2 sites rather than one. And my youthful exuberance, I'm sorry about that. But I had set up the YouTube channel under Pipe Hooligan because I set it up before I was actually serious about selling tobacco.
Okay, so everybody, honestly, go to YouTube. If you're watching this, chances are you're already on YouTube. Go to YouTube, look for Pipe Hooligan, and subscribe to Jim. How often you post on there? You post very often?
Yeah, regularly. I try to post Yabos. Again, I've gotten some wonderful pipes from the makers we've talked about, and I like to do Yabos. I'm leery about showing any of the tobacco. I've thought about it. Just the blowback from the ultra liberal YouTube. I mean, we can't even have comments on this.
Right.
I could probably end up in YouTube jail and never get to talk about anybody's pipes. So I've been leery about it. And to be honest, about the only place I show anything is Instagram or Vero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're on Vero now. So that's actually one thing. So again, I won't keep you all night, but I've noticed on Instagram a lot of guys are posting their Vero accounts. They're switching over to Vero because they've noticed, Instagram has a lot of issues right now with hacking accounts and rules and regulations, shadow banning based on the subject matter, things like that. So what's your Vero account name?
I am Emerson Southern Forge.
Great. Same thing over there. Great. That's
Yep.
everybody find him on Vero. I actually haven't made a Vero account. I need to do that because everybody apparently is jumping over to Vero.
Vero is a lot cleaner than Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
There are also a lot less lonely Russian women wanting to chat with you.
Well, then I'm not going to Vero. Why?
Yeah, if you start off a conversation
you're not helping, man.
with me, hey, handsome, obviously you've got some eyesight issues or maybe a mental deficiency. I look like an ancient bear.
Don't we all?
Yeah, and what bothers I think most people is the number of ads that are just populate or the suggestions. Right. Hey, Jim, you smoke a pipe. Would you like to follow this guy who jogs? Well, no. I'm the antidote to that guy. I want to sit quietly in a chair by myself.
Right.
I will only run if pursued, and then maybe.
That's hilarious. The thing that kills me, and this is completely off topic, is and they say they don't do this, but I'm in marketing and I can follow the breadcrumbs. I know exactly what's happening. You'll be having a conversation offline with a friend or your wife or whatever, and you'll mention XYZ product. And the very next day, you'll see that product advertised all over Instagram. And they say they're not listening.
Oh.
But there are some amazing coincidences that happen.
I did an experiment at the office one day. We set our phones off in a different room and walked to a different room. And I said, okay, Kat, we're all going to, lady I work with, we're going to go talk about your brother's new pizza oven. And I want you to mention it by its name.
Yeah.
While we've all got our phones.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, what are you trying to prove to us, Jim? Well, that I have way too much time on my hands
right.
and that they're listening all the time. So she talked about this pizza oven, and I've never Google searched a pizza oven. I've never had the desire to have a pizza oven. I have no interest in pizza ovens. But sure enough, within 2 hours, 3 of us in the conversation had that pizza oven showing up.
Right.
And, oh, look, I'm on Fox News, and the first commercial that pops up is, this pizza oven, but they're not listening. No.
It's totally, and I'm in marketing. I do marketing for Fortune 500 companies. I mean, I deal with some very, very big clients and some very, very big accounts. And I deal with social media companies, and they say, that's crazy. We don't listen. That's not how it works. However, everybody who's ever been on social media can tell you that's not true. That's exactly what's happening. It's hilarious.
No, that's a bold-faced lie. In fact, at a company that I worked for in Arizona, we actually paid a fee so that every time someone mentioned our product in a conversation, we would show up in the ad.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think it was $4 or $5 every time someone mentioned it. Our ad would pop up.
It would
in
have
their
to be
feed.
expensive. The CPM on that would have to be through the roof.
Yeah, well, luckily it was an obscure product, so it wasn't,
You're not
people aren't. Yeah, gee, I
right.
really need
It
to
wasn't
test
breaking
the
the bank.
radial pressure of this ductwork. Oh, okay. Well, we have a
Yeah.
tool for that.
Oh man, I know, it's crazy. So you're on Vero. So it's Emerson Southern Forge on Vero.
Yep.
One thing that I'm actually considering is I think I'm gonna start streaming over on Rumble. They actually charge for streaming right now, I think, because they're still kind of building up to it. They're not quite up to YouTube standards yet. But what are your thoughts on posting on Rumble as opposed to YouTube?
I'll probably migrate over. The problem is they're all great when they start. If you look back to what
Yeah.
YouTube was when it started, it was the wild, wild west. And, you could post anything. And then, once corporate sponsors and, differing political views come into play,
Right.
it's a different animal. And, I think you see that on Instagram, you see it on Facebook, we don't censor the news much more than an average Soviet
Right.
propaganda machine.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk all day about
we
that.
don't censor the news. No, we don't do that. So as new platforms come up, I think the prudent thing to do is to at least move part of what you're doing to them, because
Right.
you establish the foothold. If I were your coach, I would tell you to do both.
Absolutely.
When you look at Instagram, I've got 2,500 followers, and that many people haven't moved over. No, I agree. I wouldn't give up your Instagram account, but I would definitely build a presence on Vero, and then you'll be thrilled at how few ads you see, and you see it's not all that different to navigate, and I'm sure that Rumble isn't all that difficult to navigate.
Right.
And look at all the online forums like Reddit. Reddit was 10 years ago. Reddit was the wild, wild west, and now it's a liberal hive mind. So
yeah. Again, we could talk all day about that. So for everybody watching and listening, honestly, there is a war, and it's evident by the fact that YouTube turned off comments to this video. So again, I apologize if you had comments you wanted to ask on YouTube specifically, but YouTube turned them off because we're talking about a subject matter they disagree with. There is actually a war on tobacco happening right now on the digital platforms. So honestly, the best thing that you can do, and this is not, this sounds self-serving, this is not self-serving. The best thing you can do is subscribe to your favorite channels on YouTube that deal with tobacco. You can not only watch the videos, you have to like the video, hit the like, you have to comment also. And the number one thing that's actually hitting the algorithm right now is share the video out. Okay? Even if the other person doesn't actually watch the video, the action of sharing that video tells the YouTube algorithm that more people need to see this video, people that you associate with. So you need to subscribe, you need to watch, you need to like, you need to share. So if you don't want to do all those things for me, go over to Emerson Southern Forged. It was Pipe Hooligan, correct?
Yep, Pipe Hooligan.
Pipe Hooligan on YouTube. Subscribe, watch his videos, like those videos, and share them out, because that is the only way that you are going to continue to get the great content from people like Jim Steffey from Emerson Southern Forge. So, Jim, remind us one more time how somebody can get your tobacco.
You can email me at emersonsouthern@yahoo.com, or you can DM me on Instagram or Vero at Emerson Southern Forge.
That is fantastic. And Jim, honestly, I can't thank you enough for all of the samples you sent me. As soon as I get through these, I will absolutely buy more of yours. And I think, you know what? I think we'll be talking soon, because I might want to get my own private blend from you. I want to get a Order of the Pipe blend.
Well,
it's going to be an aromatic, though, if you can handle it.
Oh, great. Sure.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm going to color it with Kool-Aid. Hope you like it.
It'll be bright purple. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thanks a lot for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. And
thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. I enjoyed it a lot, Wes, and I hope someday we can do it again.
Absolutely. We will totally talk again. In fact, I'm going to speak with Eric Mills of EMC Custom Cobs. And eventually I'm going to go down to his workshop. I'm going to make a custom cob down there, and by that time, he should actually have some of his private blends that you made for him, and we will absolutely talk again.
Excellent. How fantastic.
Yeah, that is great. So everybody watching and listening, thank you so much for joining us, and check out Emerson Southern Forge on Instagram. Check out Pipe Hooligan on YouTube, and man, thanks again, Jim, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Wes. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Basically infatuated with the in-between, the ups and downs, the curves and the rounds. I'll bring it to your city or your hometown. I'll go back in time when the feeling was fine, when funkin' was legal and it wasn't a crime. Party people lined up and down the way, a bigger celebration than your birthday. Funkin' up the neighborhood, I felt the fool 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. The neighborhood, I felt the fool 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. And I have seen the world pristine, funk you up in the bushes, funk you down in the trees. Now look around, all the frowns, the yellow, the white, the red and the brown. And keep in mind, it never costs a dime, 'cause funkin' is free, I remember the time. Now look today, the streets are gray, time to take it back to yesterday. Funkin' in the neighborhood, I felt the fool 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt the fool 'cause the funkin' was good. It was good in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. Funkin' up the neighborhood, I felt fool 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt fool 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood.